Hello, my name is Ann Carlson, and today I'll be talking to you about planning your Oracle eBusiness Suite upgrade to Release 12.2. We'll look at 10 key considerations for planning and doing a good project. These are basically best practices and lessons learned that we've gathered from talking to customers who have successfully completed the project. We'll look first at how you establish the business value of the upgrade. Then we'll talk about how you decide on a project approach and a project scope. We'll then look at some of the key architecture changes that are part of 12.2, and then we'll look at additional upgrade impacts. We'll wrap up by looking at some preparation, testing, and optimization of the technical upgrade process. So let's get started by looking at how you build the business case for doing the upgrade. Now, it's basically going to be predicated on the fact that with 12.2, you'll be able to take advantage of what we call continuous innovation, which is basically the ability to advance the eBusiness Suite applications and the eBusiness Suite technology separately from one another without ever again pursuing another major upgrade. And basically what this looks like is that, from the start of 12.2, we have been coming out almost annually with what we call a cross eBusiness Suite release update pack that combines new features and enhancements along with error corrections and performance enhancements into a single consolidated update pack. The last one of those came out in September of 2024. That was 12.2.14. And in parallel with that, we've also been coming out with Enterprise Command Center releases. Those come out in a separate release vehicle, basically because they are iterating at twice the pace of the cross EBS RUPS. Now, the reason that we're able to provide these update packs is that we've changed the release paradigm that we've had for years and years. So when you move up from 12.1 to 12.2, you will be doing a major eBusiness Suite upgrade that is replacing both your eBusiness Suite applications and your middleware in a single project. But once you're on 12.2, you won't have to do that ever again. You won't have to, for example, plan around a 12.3 or a 12.4 or anything like that. Instead, you'll have the ability to advance the middleware using a tech stack only update that doesn't involve taking a new EBS code line. And then correspondingly, you'll have the ability to take new EBS code, let's say moving up to EBS 12.2.15 in the future, without changing your middleware stack. So that's really what the, so to speak, technical definition of continuous innovation is. Now, this change in release paradigm has caused a change in the support paradigm. What we have now is what we call the rolling 10 years of premier support. And what that means basically is that we haven't fixed an end date as of yet. In fact, what we say is that, at any point in time, you can look out 10 years and know that you'll still have premier support for 12.2. What we have is long-term support for 12.2 that's predicated on what we call the rolling 10 plus years of premier support. And what that basically means is that at any point in time, you can look out 10 years and know that you'll still have premier support for 12.2 until such a time as we announce to the contrary. And so far, as each year goes by, we've actually been extending the premier support window by an additional year. So you can see that as of today, the end of premier support is set at 2035. But when we come back a year from now, very good chance that it'll be 2036, and 2 years from now, 2037, and so on. So basically what you see on the top there is a really long premier support line for eBusiness Suite 12.2, and that contrasts with EBS 12.1, which if you're still running that, I'm sure you know that the premier support for that ended at the end of 2021. There is market-driven support for 12.1 that you can get for an extra fee, and if you haven't already contracted for that, I would encourage you highly to do that. There's an email at the bottom of the screen that you can contact to learn more details about the market-driven support. Now let's look at what's new in 12.2 to distinguish it from 12.1. And basically what we're doing there is continuing to innovate with a focus on 3 key investment themes: modern user experience, functional innovation, and leveraging technology. Let's look a little bit at each of those themes. The modern user experience has been concentrated primarily in the area of enterprise command centers, the information-driven navigation dashboards that we now provide for most of the eBusiness Suite products, as well as we've been focusing on providing more and enhanced HTML UIs, alternatives to some of the older forms interfaces. With respect to the enterprise command centers, if you haven't seen them yet, as you can see from the screenshots on the right, they're basically these kind of BI-style dashboards that you can set as the home page for most of the eBusiness Suite products, so that when your users start their sort of eBusiness Suite day, instead of looking at a kind of blind query screen, they are invited in to look at the current KPIs, charts and graphs related to their product. And as well, they're able to use enterprise-style search and faceted search to quickly narrow in on the set of transactions that most need their attention. And once having discovered those, they're able to quickly segue to the corresponding transaction screen or even a pop-up window to take the appropriate action. By this time, the enterprise command centers have been coming out since 2018. We now have 36 of them corresponding to the products that I show on the slide here. And each one of those command centers contains one or more function-specific or role-specific, I should say, dashboard. But we're constantly coming out with new ones of these, so you want to keep current. This is current as of September 2024. With respect to the HTML UIs, you're not required to uptake them, but we are sort of chipping away at providing HTML alternatives to some of the older forms workbenches. Here we're basically responding to requests from our users, our customers, I should say, to provide HTML for those users who prefer the more flexible, modern user interface of HTML. And you can see the current set of those that we provide on the left, and we're constantly, as I said, adding new ones to this list. In terms of the new and enhanced business functionality that's in 12.2, there what we're responding to primarily are the features and enhancements that customers most ask for. And the way that customers share their inputs, well, first off, primarily they're doing it through the so-called eBusiness Suite Ideas portal. There's a link to that at the bottom of the slide. But they're also doing that through service requests, which suggest enhancements, as well as just the straight-up customer interactions that we have at the various user group meetings and other meetings. And we basically take the most highly requested customer inputs or customer enhancement requests, and those become part of our product roadmaps. And you can see here that since the start of 12.2, we've been able to build out significant enhancements in all the product areas. I wouldn't expect you to really read this. I'm really just trying to impress on you that there's been substantial development in every one of the product families. We'll talk a little later about how you can drill in on what the new features are for each of the product areas. The other thing about 12.2 that's distinctive over 12.1 is that it's making more use of the underlying technology. So, for example, we know that the signature feature of 12.2 is online patching for reduced downtime, and we'll be talking about this technology advance a little later in the session, so I won't dwell on it here. But you may not be aware that we also added, as of 12.2.11, something that we call modernization of the EBS 12.2 database architecture, where we're making better use of latest database standards. I'll also be talking about this a little later, so moving ahead here, we've also, in this 12.2 release, certified with Autonomous Database. It's currently available, limited availability for Autonomous Dedicated, and if you think you might be a candidate for this, I would recommend that you inquire about it by contacting at the email address that I have on the bottom of the screen there. Something new as of 12.2.14 or soon after is the ability for you to get tighter integration with your custom Apex pages. Now, prior to 12.2.14, we did provide a white paper that explained how you would extend eBusiness Suite with your custom Apex code, but we've actually, in response to customer requests, provided still tighter integration. You now have the ability to register a custom Apex page as an eBusiness Suite function, and thereby making it possible for you to navigate, for your users to navigate seamlessly from the eBusiness Suite UIs to your custom Apex UIs. You even can integrate your Apex workspace schema with eBusiness Suites so that you can additions enable it. In other words, have it work with online patching. And here's the look and feel that you're able to achieve. You're basically, able to drop your Apex custom screen within an OA framework template frame, such that you're inheriting that kind of global header bar with its global menu, the home icon, the switch user icon, etc. So for your end users, your custom Apex UI looks very much like a delivered eBusiness Suite UI. Another technology that we've integrated as of 12.2.14 is Oracle Guided Learning. This is basically a user assistance technology that you can use to provide custom guides, smart tips, messages, etc., that are very specific to your own internal processes and policies. And you can connect those up with the Oracle eBusiness Suite HTML screens. We're not going to be providing content. There's not going to be any pre-built content, but you can build it yourself or work with a third party to provide that content. So hopefully now you get the flavor of some of the 12.2 advances that we've made in the three focus areas of user experience, functional innovation, and technology. You're now aware of the long-term premium support extending out through at least 2035. And this is very much, distinguishing 12.2 from 12.1, where the premium support did end at the end of 2021, and you're running 12.1 in sustaining support. In order to continue getting security updates or any patches for new issues, you will need to have enrolled in the market-driven support program. That's going to be available through the end of 2024 and again in 2025 for an additional fee. Not clear yet what's going to happen after that. So the point is, if you're on 12.1 of the eBusiness Suite and you're planning to stay with eBusiness Suite, you need to get started on your upgrade project now. let's talk about some of the details of how you're going to undertake your project. And in particular, let's talk about how you accomplish the e-business suite upgrade along with some of what I'm calling related projects. So of course, we're going to talk about going from EBS 12.13 to 12.